desert. I loved her so, in the land of enchantment, New Mexico.
The Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority exists to construct the UTE pipeline project. Most people are familiar with the name UTE pipeline, and the authority exists to carry out that work. And the authority was enacted by the state legislature in 2010, and it's made up of the member communities of Clovis, and of course Cannon Air Force Base comes along with Clovis as a member, Texico, Portales, and Elida. And these member communities are all interested in constructing this pipeline to bring that renewable source of drinking water online and have that supplement our drinking water and industrial water needs. For most residents of our member communities, it'll be seamless. The Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority is a wholesale water provider. We're going to deliver the water wholesale to, in the case of Portales, the Portales water system. In the case of Clovis, EPCOR provides water to the citizens of Clovis. And so once we're able to deliver the water from the reservoir, we will make it available in a wholesale transaction to EPCOR. And then that would hold true at Texico and Elida as well. Whatever your water system is now, they will be purchasing the water wholesale and adding it to their system. It's so important that we construct the UTE pipeline because in eastern New Mexico on the high plains, we sit above the Ogallala aquifer, and that aquifer unfortunately is in decline. The mining of the aquifer that's taking place with agricultural pumping combined with the municipal use is just not sustainable, and that aquifer is going away. So simply put, our groundwater is depleting. The leaders 60 years ago had the vision to construct the dam at UTE Reservoir and create that reservoir to create a renewable source of water for eastern New Mexico.
It's not a natural lake. I mean, it was a man-made reservoir intended for use, just like what it's going to be used for. And I know, we talked about, it was a little controversial. Sorry, it's a little controversial for those that live in the Logan Ute area. But once we, educated and talked about, and there was an understanding that we're not going to be draining the lake, and it's just going to be a relative drop in the bucket, so to speak, that we're going to be using on an annual basis. I think that understanding, quelled a lot of concerns. Our water source is the Ogallala aquifer, and we're all punching straws into the same cup, so basically. And it's been depleting faster than we've been, able to replenish it. So it becomes vital to have a water source for longevity. Water is life, right? That's what they all say. And without it, we don't have a community. So I think, with the conservation efforts we're doing with our own well fields and our water fields, we can have water for the foreseeable future. But we know that the aquifer is depleting and depleting faster than it's replenishing, so we had to have a plan. And the UTE pipeline was that plan, having that renewable water source.
Late 1800s, what you start to see is the federal government in Washington, D.C. starts to get involved in New Mexico to start finding out ways that we can water these arid, dry parts of the state that are unpopulated. So this starts around 1895. And then by 1902, you have the National Reclamation Act, which is a system put in place to start building dams and creating reservoirs of water for this purpose. So around 1905, we get our first project, Elephant Butte in the south. And one of the many reasons is because all of our sources of water in New Mexico, we share with the surrounding states and the country of Mexico. Some of them are in New Mexico, but they're in Arizona, or they're in Colorado, or Texas, and of course Mexico. So there's this back and forth relationship that has to be controlled and mediated so that water is distributed evenly. It's kind of like a national mayordomo system, if you will. So this is where we start to get these projects of dams being built in New Mexico. And obviously, World War I and World War II interrupt this process. But after World War II, the late 1940s into the 50s and 60s, you start seeing dams being built at Abiquiu, at Cochiti. And it creates problems for some of the Puebloan communities because their cultures and their land base are being infiltrated and disrupted by the construction of these dams. So there's some controversy and conflict and tension there. But that's where you start to see these dams being built. By 1963, you have the UTE Dam and Reservoir project put in place. We have records of droughts in New Mexico. It's cyclical. The worst drought in New Mexico is the one you happen to be in. And I think that's how we have to look at it, is that droughts happen, but we also need to be prepared for droughts because climates change, landscapes are affected, humans, animals, plants, everything is affected by it because we need water.
I am incredibly impressed with the vision that these communities had to make sure that they had a reliable source of water because of the decline in the Ogallala. That was visionary back then, and they have been working on this a long time. And it is being built right now during a mega drought. And the issues around the Colorado River don't impact us here because we're on the other side of the Continental Divide. But the understanding that we must do more to make sure our communities have access to clean, reliable water is very much in everybody's consciousness. We just passed the Inflation Reduction Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act is going to put more money into addressing the drought and into providing the tools that our communities need, that our ranchers and farmers need to preserve every drop of water and to make sure that we get clean, reliable water to every community that needs it. Every household should be able to turn on their tap and get clean water and have it available to them to do what they need to. What I like about what the visionaries who put this together did was recognize that it's for household use, it's for industry, it's for manufacturing, and it's for the Cannon Air Force Base, it's for government. All of those areas that need to survive, each one of those how am I going to put this? Each one of those areas that I described, from domestic to business to governmental, to the Cannon Air Force Base, they all are integral to what makes Clovis, Portales, and this area thrive. And we want to make sure that they can continue into existence, and that's really important. Water is neither red nor blue. We just need water to be clean, right? So we have no red water, we have no blue water. We want clean water. And so in that sense, it should never be a partisan issue. I brought two different tranches of money to this. I brought two different sources of money to this. One was for appropriations, or regular appropriations. We were able to get $17 million put into the regular appropriations bill, which was a bipartisan bill. We then were able to get significant funding in the Bipartisan Infrastructure and Jobs Act. And that's really where the largest chunk of money for this project came from, $160 million. And it was highly bipartisan in the Senate. And in the House, we were able to get 10 Republicans join with every single Democrat to pass that law. So that was bipartisan indeed. And I think it's important that we recognize that infrastructure is what government is supposed to do. And basic infrastructure like water has to be put in the ground so we can have it coming out of our taps. If we didn't put this project on a path to completion, Portales, Clovis, Texico, Elida, the Cannon Air Force Base would not be in our future. And so that's when we get people to agree on that, of whatever party, that we want to keep our community strong, then we agree that the solution is make sure they have water.
We've been receiving funding from the federal government as an authorized project for over 10 years now. However, the $1 billion being allocated to the federally authorized projects changes everything, right? Because now that means there's going to be an increased amount, a ramped up amount of federal funding coming in. And then there comes the challenge, right? Because obviously this project cannot be completed without the federal government support. And so without their portion, this isn't possible. So we're grateful for that, but with that comes the challenge of the 25% non-federal match. So the federal government, through the Bureau of Reclamation, is providing 75% of the funding for the project. The other 25 is being made up between the state of New Mexico and our member communities. The state of New Mexico is coming in at 15%, and the member communities at that remaining 10%. Now that 10% match is a burden for even at that. But we're grateful to the support from the state of New Mexico and obviously from the United States government and the Bureau of Reclamation for that 75% portion. And speaking of the funding structure, for the last 10 plus years, the state of New Mexico has really been a champion for this project and has stayed ahead on their 15% share.
We had a 25-year plan over the last several years, but a recent allocation of money out of the infrastructure bill that passed in D.C. should just hopefully come close to completing the project. That, in conjunction with some $30 million we just got from the state of New Mexico on top of that, should come close to completing it. The inflation has probably eaten up a little of that, but and we're on a 10-year timeline now. Each phase of the project should be started within the next 2 years. It's something we never saw coming, which is great. And the struggle now is going to be our local portions. The project's 75% federal funding, 15% state funding, and 10% local. And the local governments had planned on funding their part over the next 20 years or so, and now we're looking at having to come up with it right off the bat, but it's a great problem to have. It's hard to grow in a small community in rural New Mexico, but if we have a guaranteed supply of water for the long term, I think that it will probably alleviate anyone's concerns about the water system. And it's pretty hard to attract a business or even residents to a place to invest money for a home or a business without a steady water supply. So the renewable portion, I think, will get us years and years down the road. And people have done great with conserving water. Elida, Portales, Clovis, everyone's water use per household has dropped significantly over the last 20 years. So even with more residents, everyone's using less water than they were. All of the newer, your faucets, your showers, your toilets are all low flow now, where you used to have high flow, high volume. That's cut way down, and a lot of people are xeriscaping in their yards. A lot of they have some incentives, not here, but in places people do xeriscape their yard just to conserve water, because it's a dying resource in this part of New Mexico, or the entire Southwest.
Really, it was when I was first elected to the Senate. Even during the campaign, when I would go to Clovis and Portales, it was what people would want to talk about, and just the sustainability or lack thereof in the water supply. And so immediately as I started getting to know the communities out there, it was kind of issue number one. I think there are a lot of heroes on this particular project because people in eastern New Mexico have understood the urgency of this for a long time. And what's changed is I think my colleagues now understand the urgency of water in a way that even 10 years ago when I started on this, they did not. So we made a lot of progress increasing the speed at which we were working on this project. But with the bipartisan infrastructure plan, we were just able to move up the timeline dramatically, and that's pretty exciting. It's a number of communities in eastern New Mexico, and not just cities like Clovis and Portales, but obviously the impact that the Air Force has on eastern New Mexico is enormous. And this really gives the Pentagon the certainty that investing in additional missions and additional infrastructure at Cannon, that they can make those commitments knowing full well that 25 years from now, 50 years from now, Cannon is still going to be a sustainable entity. And so it really helps, in addition to the municipalities that have been really talking to me about this project for as long as I can remember, it also helps me advocate for Cannon with the Department of Defense and the Pentagon because they know that these are going to be vibrant communities decades from now.
When I go talk to civic organizations, like Rotary or Altrusa or those clubs, and even when I talk to my board, one of the first things I always tell them, the biggest economic development project we have going right now is this pipeline. Not only from a sheer dollar perspective, I mean that's a no-brainer, but what it brings to the table. Like currently, the city of Portales, when we talk about economic development, we don't even consider high water users, industries, or businesses, and the city council has to approve anything that uses 100,000 gallons of water a month or more for them to have permission to start a new business. So, it really restricts economic development. So with that, having a renewable water source, it's a game changer. It enables us to be able to open up to industries that use water. We still probably won't use a high water user, but right now we're not, almost to no water users. So it is a game changer for us. It's for our future economic development. The dairy industry is a vital part of our community, of our counties of the southeastern New Mexico. And, they came here for a reason. They're also high water users, in our Ogallala aquifer. When that depletes, or if and that does, and we don't know if that's 10, 20, 40, 100 years from now, I'm sure they'll have to make the decisions and what replaces them, over time. We hope that we can develop our communities that have a strong economy that can maybe withstand that change.
If you're trying to attract new industry, if you're trying to attract new retail, whatever it is, if you don't have adequate water supplies, people are really hesitant to invest in a community, and for obvious good reason. And I think this really takes that uncertainty away to a large degree and allows us to more effectively plan our future.
I own a business in Clovis. I'm like all of the rest of the residents around here. I want to see my kids grow up here. I want to see my grandkids have opportunity to live here. And so we have to address these critical issues. And what's more critical than water? If we're to carry out economic development projects and grow our communities and grow our region and see investment in our region, we have to answer that question about water, and so naturally I was drawn to the issue. I've watched from a distance for many years and have appreciated and admired the leaders of this project over the years, and really appreciated the support that I've been able to see from the federal level and obviously the state level. But then those champions here, those past board members, those past mayors of Portales and Clovis and Texico and Elida that have not given up. It's because of them that we're where we're at and that we're in the position that we're in to see the project completed. So my involvement in a way I almost feel guilty about, because I only came on the authority board about a year ago, and was made chairman at that time. And so, I come in at probably the most exciting time in the life of the project, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that opportunity, because again, we don't have a greater need. There's not a greater challenge that we must address. And so I'm excited in my public service to be able to be working on this now and see it so close to being completed.
One of the things I found most impressive about this project is that the communities are not fighting with each other for this scarce resource of water, but they are working together to solve this problem. And when you have our different communities working together to solve a problem, you can get anything done. And that's what we're seeing here with the Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority. It is very impressive.